Our esteemed speaker today is Upakul, a seasoned mobile engineering professional with over 15 years at Infograin. Today, he'll delve into the fascinating realm of generative AI, sharing insights cultivated through years of leadership in high-tech solutions, iOS and Android applications, and cloud computing. Opakul's expertise extends across the software development lifecycle, featuring proficiency in Agile Scrum methodologies and diverse domains like high tech, retail, and finance. Grateful to have you with us, Upakul, and to our fantastic audience for being a part of this session. So you can
Thank you
start
so
with your
much, Yasha.
questions.
Sure. So, good evening, everyone. It's a very pleasant evening to be amongst all the young technocrats today. Uh, I am Upakul, and thanks, Yasha, for the wonderful introduction. So, today we intend to cover one of the very hot topics, which is generative AI. And let me actually share a presentation as well. So, Yasha, would we be able to communicate with the audience, or is it a webinar?
It's a webinar, but they'll be commenting on the screen, so you'll be able to see that.
Okay, sure. Just allow me 1 second to share the screen. Okay, so is my screen visible?
Yes.
Wonderful. So, okay, when we talk about generative AI, so let's start with an image that we see on the screen, right? So, any guesses anyone would like to take a shot at describing this particular scene, what we see on the screen? Oh, I think I cannot see the comment boxes. That's nice. I hear robot drawing a self portrait. Okay, just to give two high level points, this image was generated by Dolly, which is one of the many popular generative AI engines, which is there, and it depicts different generations of robots. So, uh, even the robotic evolution has come a long way. And the one on the left, what we see is a primitive robot where the robot is painting a depiction of one of the more advanced robots, which we see on the right hand side. So the one on the left is more analog, and it is painting an analog version of the new robot, while the one on the right is much more sophisticated. We can see digital displays as well as, a complete set of facial expressions, maybe very close to humans. Uh, so this was just an introduction on how technology has moved from an uh, era to a completely new generation, and even before we could get to generative AI. So that's what we'll delve into today. So starting with what is generative AI and why should we care, right? So so essentially, what is generative AI? And even before we get to generative AI, what has been the stages of evolution of artificial intelligence, right? Reaching up to generative AI, which is what we have today as of 2023. So back in 1956, when artificial intelligence was first introduced, it was the field of computer science essentially, which seek to create intelligent machines which can replicate or even exceed human intelligence. And that was the entire thought process behind artificial intelligence. And it took quite a few years until 1997, at least 40 years, to you know take that onto the next level, which was the era of machine learning. Now, machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence that enables machines to learn from existing data and improve upon the data to make precise decisions or predictions, as what we say. Now, another 20 years, and there was this era of deep learning, which was a class of machine learning techniques in which layers of neural networks were now used to process data and make those decisions. And within the next 6 years, no one knew, right, that it would be a completely new era of generative AI, which could create newly written visual as well as auditory content given prompts or existing data. So, even within generative AI, it has evolved from simple mere pattern recognition to complex content creation, which is both very scary. At the same time, it's extraordinarily good as well. So, as of today, we are at the cusp of redefining creativity, enabling machines to collaborate with humans in the fields of art, design, decision making like never before. So we'll venture through the power of generative AI in the upcoming sections. So this captures the usual definition. It's artificial intelligence capable of generating text, images, and other media using generative models. Generative AI models learn the patterns and structure of their input training data, and then they generate new data that has similar characteristics, right? So these are the keywords that we'll be using. Generative AI. Generative AI has foundation models. Then, of course, you'll be hearing a lot about LLMs, which are the large language models, and very popular keyword, ChatGPT, which you're hearing all the while. So, ChatGPT is nothing but it's one type of generative AI engine. There are many such alternatives, but the chat here typically represents to a chat interface, so that as a human you can typically have an ongoing interaction or chat with the machine. And then GPT is the entire technology that we are talking about. So let's talk about the landscape. The overall generative AI landscape. It has been evolving very quickly. Up until 2023, very few of us would have heard about generative AI or even ChatGPT, though the research has been going on for several years. But it was like Big Bang came into the limelight all of a sudden, right? So many companies have been working on it. They have been procuring or they have been acquiring products, right, which have been in these areas. So one of the very popular bracket of products is owned by OpenAI, which includes GPT, which is one of them, the latest version being GPT-4. And in fact, OpenAI recently announced GPT-4 Turbo, which has much more power as compared to even the earlier versions of GPT-4, GPT 3.5. And then there is Codex, and then there is Dolly. So Dolly is again more of a image generation engine based on the text or data background that we have at this point of time. And then Google introduced Bard, Google Bard, and then there's Google BERT. Meta has Llama. Uh, Amazon has Titan, right? And then there is Dolly, Stability.ai, Hugging Face, Anthropic, and GitHub Copilot. Now, some of these are also, turning out as productivity tools. For example, there is GitHub Copilot, which supports enterprises and even developers to actually help generate code and see unit test cases for the code, right? Overall, improve the overall developer productivity as well as improve the code quality, because it comes with an inbuilt set of rules, and then the organizations can also set their specific context and prompts in respect to the best coding practices, right? So that's all about the landscape, generative AI landscape. And GPT we covered, which is essentially the generative pre-trained transformers. Of course, probably it has nothing to do about the Transformers movie, but I think that's the correlation we typically get as soon as we hear the name. But of course, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformers, which is a family of neural network models, right, that uses the transformer architecture and is a key advancement in the artificial intelligence architectural arena. Now, we have been hearing generative AI all over the news, right, for at least for the last 6 months or so. So, what did the NVIDIA CEO say? He said that the generative AI is an iPhone moment, right, in the area of artificial intelligence. And then the PayPal CEO had to say that AI will lower the cost for years to come, which looks presumably true at this point of time. Or even if it may not lower costs, but it will definitely guarantee that at the same cost, there'll be a lot more output or features, additions uh, for the same budget, essentially. And then the New York Times mentioned that generative AI can add $4.4 trillion in the global economy value chain. And Harvard Business Review had to say that generative AI will change your business. And obviously, it's very important for all software, hardware organizations to adapt to the upcoming change. Because if we don't adapt today, then tomorrow someone else will take our place. So on the right hand side, we have this timeline, of course, quoted from one of the GitHub projects. So back in 2019, we had Google T5. It was an open source project and kind of the very first one in that league. So from this chart, you can imagine how quickly things have turned up within the span of the last 4 years. I think the last 4 years when most of us would have been at home due to the pandemics. That's where the entire generative AI, market went from essentially zero or nowhere to where we are today. So it's been a long way. Google T5 in 2019, GPT-3 for the first time came out in 2020. Between 2021 and 2022, there were several releases. Codex was one of them. WebGPT was another, right? And then we had Titan, Ernie 3.0 Titan. Between 2022 to 23, of course, there's been a huge turnaround. Sparrow and Alpha Code. We have Alexa TM. A lot of players came into the market, and ChatGPT. So here you see like ChatGPT for the first time, because 2020 was GPT-3, which was transformer engine. The chat interface came to the forefront in almost November, December of 2022. And since then, there has been no looking back. In between January to March this year, we had like GPT-4, Llama, Ernie, Bard, and it's there for history. Now, why is generative AI important for us, and what are the different areas or where we can actually leverage generative AI in our day-to-day lives? So even you know, like even as students, like essentially all of us are students. We have to learn every day, keep ourselves updated on what is happening around the world. I also have to learn a lot from you. But essentially in our day-to-day lives, like even as students, or let's not talk about software development or the industry at this point of time. In our day-to-day lives as normal human beings, where can we leverage generative AI, right? So very powerful example for students specifically is there's a lot of help you can get from generative AI and solving your assignments. Of course, there have been debates on whether it kills creativity. Using generative AI and leveraging it, adding your thoughts on top to it, I consider that to be creativity as well. But yeah, like that is one major area. Like one is to get answers quickly. Of course, we have been using Google Stack Overflow as well over the years to get answers to questions we have been stuck on. But here, the difference is you simply ask a question to ChatGPT or any other chat-based generative AI engine, and there's an answer, right? There's an answer for you. What's the easiest way for you? I'm sure like all of you would have tried out generative AI in some form or the other, but if you have still not done it, what is the easiest way for you to do so? So you can just create a ChatGPT account. The trial account is free, and you can get started. It's as simple as that. And then Bing, um, Microsoft Bing also provides an interface to GPT-4. So all you need to do is download the Bing application on either your Android phones or iPhones, and then you have a chat interface there, and you can ask literally any questions to the Bing interface. And then the best part is it will also include the citations. Citations are references to different websites from which it would have taken the data. And of course, there may be other training models as well, but of course, citations are currently restricted to the web available web content. And if we look at the industry aspects, then of course there's product development, because in the software industry, we can leverage generative AI to write a lot of code. Now, currently, there is no fixed amount, like what percentage of code. Like if I had to write, if I took 100 hours to write an application, now what will be the total hours after I have generative AI along with me, right? So if I take generative AI as a pair programmer, then probably I can save 30-40% of my time. Like it varies. These are subjective. These are subjective measures at this point of time, and then uh, there may be examples where the some examples where entire applications were probably written by generative AI itself, or multiple generative AI applications would have collaborated or would have been leveraged to generate the entire application. And we'll take an example or two of that as well. But otherwise, generally, maybe 20, 30, 40% savings is what we are generally seeing to start. Uh, and that ways it will enhance developer productivity. I mean, the output would be more for the given amount of time, right? It can also help us a lot in generating documentation, like code commenting would typically be a pain for many of our colleagues in the software industry. But with generative AI, it's like wow, it is able to understand code very efficiently, and it generates a good amount of documentation, either in terms of code comments or as user manuals or even as release documents. And you'd be surprised, I mean, even for legacy assembly code in COBOL, like its efficiency of generating English documentation is very high. I mean, even to our surprise. And it can also help to create new product designs and reusable accelerators as well. So again, when we talk about product designs, it covers two aspects. One might be the technical design, and the other might be the UX or user experience design. So technical design, there'll be a lot of inputs from generative AI, both in terms of code or code structures or even the architectures. And even for user experience designs, as I mentioned, one of the engines is Dolly, which can generate images, right? So yeah, I mean, why not? Obviously, it will evolve over the years, but even today, I mean, it is able to, if we are able to provide the prompts correctly. Prompts is like what text or what inputs or what context setting we do with the chat GPT engine so that it is able to comprehend and understand what we are asking it to do, and accordingly it generates the output, right? So with the correct set of prompts, it is still able to generate a good decent set of uh, user experience designs. And another interesting area may be customer support. Over the years we have seen, like, we used to leverage IVRs for a long time, right? To call up, BSNL or MTNL, uh, all our favorite product support teams. With time, we also saw that many of those were probably answered by chatbots, right? So these are the next level of chatbots with chat GPT or GPT based large language models. So they can really enhance customer experience by leveraging the conversational AI capabilities. It can also provide personalized recommendations as well, because it has all your product data, right? The kind of purchases you have made, or what are the warranties of your existing products and things like that. So based on that, it can, add personalized recommendations on which AMC to take, or if your AMC is pending. And it may also suggest accessories for your products. It may also, based on your buying patterns, it may also suggest other things which you might be interested in. It also has other support, like, it can also enable runtime localization for multilingual support. So, instead of English, if I'd prefer Hindi, it can, I would no longer need to, as a developer, I'd no longer need to provide it the strings, all the strings in all the languages, or connect it to any translation engine. It can very much, GPT itself can very much do it at runtime. Quite powerful. And then cloud operations, it can also help expedite cloud deployment by leveraging GAI to generate deployment templates as well. So cloud deployment is when you generate your, when you typically have your own websites, for example, and then you want to host it or deploy it on a cloud environment like AWS or Azure. And that's where GPT can also, or generative AI can also help you with the cloud deployments and operations. Okay, now the next part is we're talking about generative AI. So, what can we try out as of today, right? What can all of us try out? So, there are various versions, as I mentioned, some of those. So, there is Chat GPT, which is a chat version of GPT. You can simply, this is owned by OpenAI, and you can simply create your own account and you can have access to the chat interface. You might also have access to Dolly, which is the image generation engine. So as of today, like, the entire engine has been integrated into one single chat interface. So you no longer would have to select between different engines like Default or Bing or Dolly. You can ask any questions, and the system is intelligent enough to comprehend what you are asking it to do. And the second one on the right top corner is the logo for Bing Chat. So that I mentioned, you can just download the Bing application on, either your Android phones or iOS phones. Of course, it would be available on Windows as well. So, seamless, like, just to try out. It's a very fine application to try out GPT on. Then we have the bottom two are examples of tools which can help improve developer productivity or generate code for us. So GitHub Copilot is one of them, Amazon Code Whisperer is another, and they are very powerful tools, from giving you, autocomplete suggestions for your code to, generating complete files for you. It's that powerful. So it's available across a wide range of technologies. So Java, if you think about Java, C++, .NET, it's all there. It's also supports like iOS, Android, Kotlin, React Native, Angular. I think it's difficult to think of anything which it doesn't support. It's very powerful. It may not support, it has support for limited IDEs. It may not support all IDEs at the moment. IDEs are the integrated development environments which you have been using. But mostly GitHub supports Visual Studio Code editor, and Amazon Code Whisperer supports many of the popular IDEs as well. So worth trying it out. Definitely, I think Code Whisperer is free. Copilot may have a trial version, but then there are build individual plans, and then there are enterprise plans. Enterprise plans, of course, are of more utility to companies and software companies where they have to generate code. So that, of course, there's a big debate on, you might have been hearing, on privacy and concerns about if my data would be used for training the public models and would be available to the public. There have been instances as well where top secret data has got leaked into the public domain. But for all those scenarios, there are these enterprise versions where even if there is any data which is being uploaded to the cloud for generating prompts, then also it is deleted immediately afterwards. The suggestions are generated, or better still, it might be within an enterprise sandbox. And amongst the two, we thought of, why not have a look at one of the platforms. So let's check out what AWS Code Whisperer is. So again, amongst the four tools that we spoke about, ChatGPT and Bing will help you answer questions. They are very much in public domain, so any question that you ask, any data that you provide, expected to be used to train the public models, and it will be available in the public domain sooner or later. Of course, not like who asked this question, but more from the content perspective. And the bottom two are the tools which you might like to leverage to actually generate code and integrate with your IDs, and generate maybe unit test cases for your code in different languages. So we spoke about AWS Code Whisperer, right? So one of the very popular use cases is to generate unit test cases where the code is available. So it's pretty easy even for machines to, interpret what the code is doing and generate unit test cases in any language of your choice, and using any framework of your choice. So typically, all you need to do is leverage the AWS plugin for Visual Studio Code. You have to install it, and then it's available as auto completing of suggestions, so it can be leveraged to write unit test cases. They say that the better the prompts are, the better is the quality of the output. So prompts are essentially provided in two ways. If there's a chat interface like Copilot has, you provide the entire context and prompt in plain English to the Copilot chat in order for it to comprehend what you're asking for and generate the corresponding code. And similarly, on AWS, if you are trying to use autocomplete, then you'll have to provide your context in code comments. So in the same file, you'll have to provide a comment of what you're trying to do, and probably also a preferred algorithm of what you're trying to do. And then based on your comment, it will comprehend what we are trying to achieve, and then it will generate the code accordingly. What AWS is also capable of doing is to run security scans on your already available code. So security scans can point you to any vulnerabilities that your code might have, any risk that it might see. So having said that, how can we leverage generative AI then? One is, of course, as we spoke, to expedite application development with generative AI. The traditional software development lifecycle may reduce 30% to 60% at an average. And then we can leverage generative AI accelerators to expedite front-end development, back-end development, middleware. It's everything at this point of time, including test cases as well. So it can help the quality assurance engineers to write functional test cases, both positive, negative, edge cases. It can also help to write automation code as well in any language of your choice, be it Selenium or Appium or any other specific XCUI test or Android Espresso, which are specific to particular development platforms. Then, of course, I mentioned localization for multilingual options, uh, translation into different languages. And then we can leverage secure GPT client platform with proper prompt engineering. And we can also power multilingual trained chatbots with generative AI. So typically we can, club these into two buckets. The bucket one being uh, leveraging generative AI for businesses or enterprises, like they may like to introduce a chatbot to solve an end consumer problem, right? And bucket two may be leveraging generative AI to power your SDLC lifecycle, to power your software development and software testing, right? And that's where the bottom set of tools, the co-pilots and the code whisperers, come into the play. So tools in the generative AI ecosystem, which help in coding, include Amazon Code Whisperer, GitHub Copilot. There's OpenAI as well. Azure has integrated OpenAI as well, so you'd have easy access to OpenAI APIs via Azure in case you are looking at integrating some of these APIs with your own applications. Okay, and here's an example of if you want to generate code with AWS Code Whisperer. So first of all, the first thing you need to do is, I'm assuming Visual Studio Code is still popular with you guys the way it's popular with us, or was popular with us during our times. It's still very popular in the industry, but there are IntelliJ and other, more user-friendly IDs which are available now. Uh, the Code Whisperer plugin is available for most of these IDs. So we can see on the right-hand side, we have VS Code, we have IntelliJ IDEA, PyCharm, AWS Cloud9, AWS Lambda Console as well, right? And it supports many languages, inclusive of JavaScript, TypeScript, Java, .NET, and we evaluated it to generate unit test cases using the React testing library, but it pretty much knows all the languages. So if you're thinking of using Jest or Enzyme, just have to mention it in the prompt, and then it will be more than happy to generate whatever code we need in the language of our choice. And the tool provides auto suggestions. The best ways are to write comments, which will give a hint to the tool on what the developer is trying to achieve. So just recapitulating what we covered. The major limitation here is, however, that the developer has to think through all the use cases and then start writing the code, and then only Code Whisperer can help complete the code with its auto suggestions. However, the expectation, if there's an expectation that the tool will generate the complete unit testing file on its own, then uh, I mean, at least the last known, it did not work that way, but it works that way with Copilot, because Copilot has introduced the chat version of it, right? It can generate the complete unit testing code file as well. That's why I said scary as well, right? If everything can be done by generative AI, what will engineers do? But nevertheless, just quoting a quote from the very famous Elon Musk. He said, generative AI is the most powerful tool for creativity that has ever been created. It has the potential to unleash a new era of human innovation. And very true. I mean, we should not see it as a risk at this point of time. It will only help fuel our innovation to the next level in a much shorter time period. Otherwise, we might have needed the next 100 years to reach somewhere. With generative AI and the upcoming technologies, we could be there anywhere in the next 5 to 10 years as well. No one knows. So I'll wrap it up with that note and open it up for any questions. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Yasha, if you'd like to take over.
Yes, so thank you, sir, thank you, sir, once again for being with us, and to all of you for being such a wonderful audience and joining us on this occasion. All the questions, the comment section is open for questions, and you'll get them on your screen.
Okay, wonderful. I do see a lot of questions coming in already, so this is fantastic.
So Anukansha Priya wants to know, how does generative AI differ from other forms of artificial intelligence?
Right, right. That's a very interesting question, uh, Anukanksha. So, in the very first slide, we had covered about the evolution of AI, right? How AI has moved from the basic AI models to machine learning to deep learning to generative AI. So, to answer your question precisely, generative AI is all about generating content. So, generative AI focuses on creating new content and data. Okay, it can create emails for you, it can create your assignment for you, it can create slides for you, it can create art forms for you as well. While traditional AI solves specific tasks with predefined rules. So, in other words, generative AI uses unsupervised learning and generative models, while traditional AI often employs supervised learnings and discriminative models. I mean, just to cover the technicalities. So, does that answer your question?
I think it does. So we'll have the next question now. Bhavishya Rajput wants to know, how can college students with varying levels of technical background get started with learning about and experimenting with generative AI?
Right, right. That's a very good question, Bhavishya. So, and it's very important as well for all of us, not just college students. It's equally important for all of us who are in the industry to quickly jump on the generative AI bandwagon and get ourselves updated quickly. So, if you want to get started, there are many courses which are already getting online. uh, it's on YouTube, as well as there are learning websites like Udemy and Coursera, which provide some very good content that will help us gain some good theoretical content on generative AI. I have also gone through some courses which Google also provides. Like, it's more of like a masterclass or a very high level generative AI masterclass for professionals. So that can be a good starting point as well. And as far as experimenting with generative AI goes, that's where, if you remember, we had covered ChatGPT and Bing, right? So that's where you can start experimenting with generative AI. In fact, for ChatGPT, you just need to go to openai.com. You can create a trial account there. It gives you a certain set of tokens for experimenting. So you can just ask any kind of questions to it. You can ask it, just give some context and ask it to generate an email. It can ask it to answer some questions. You can also ask it to generate an image for you. You can give your problem statement or your class assignment and ask it to solve it. You can also give a program which it can take an attempt in any particular programming language of your choice. So all of that is very much feasible now. And the second option is Bing. The Bing application can be downloaded on iOS or Android, on your iOS or Android phones, and then you can use Bing Chat to ask these same questions. Though it is available just on mobiles, but ChatGPT is also available on the web version of it as well.
So our next question is, how do researchers evaluate the performance and quality of generated content from these models?
Exactly, and that's a very important question, Jack. So, even in the industry, there has been a lot of debate now on, how the performance and quality of the generated content can be evaluated. So, of late, if you go to the ChatGPT website, also, na, So below your chat input text box, there is a line that has been added by ChatGPT, which says that ChatGPT can make mistakes. Consider checking important information. So obviously, I mean, information can be of two parts. So there can be two kinds of questions, right? When we talk about generated content, one is questions can be based on factual data. For example, if I want to know about the history of the Indian freedom struggle, or if I want to know about, who is the um, current CEO of a particular company, or who's the current principal of a particular college. So ChatGPT gathers that information, right, from various models or web pages it might have crawled. Now, some versions of ChatGPT, of course, are trained on models which were there up till a particular amount of time. So ChatGPT 3.5 may be able to get you information only till late 2022, but not the latest information. But since then, there has been web plugins which have been introduced by OpenAI, which can actually serve the live websites and live available content on the webs and generate an answer for you. But it is subject to mistakes because if I mention that the principal of my college is Upakul in five different places, and name of the actual principal of my college is just there in the official website. ChatGPT can easily get fooled to pick up the content from these five websites and say that Upakul is the principal here. So it is subject to human validations and verifications. And that's the reason why uh, OpenAI and many of these websites have also started mentioning the citations so that users can go and verify on these links but it's subject to human intelligence and verification. So they would have to manually verify, and that's where the human intelligence piece comes into the picture. Now, the second part of it is generated content for programs, right? Programs or coding, what we were talking about. And that's why human intelligence is still very important, because you ask the engine to generate a piece of code. It may have understood the context correctly. It may not have understood the context correctly, right? It would just generate some program for you. You will have to interpret it as a software developer, as a programming expert. You will have to interpret if the generated output is actually what you have been looking for and is actually providing the required output or not. You'll have to probably try it out to run it as well. And I remember a case when I tried to so for iOS applications, right? These are mobile applications which run on iPhone devices. So there are two types of test cases, so Xcode is the ID that we use for writing iOS programs. And then it has two types of test cases. One is called XC unit test, which is for writing unit test cases. And then there is XC UI test, which is used for writing UI test or UI related automation tests for iOS applications. So we happen to ask the engine to generate some UI test cases for the iOS application, and it went ahead and generated some nice test cases, but it did so using the XC unit test framework and not XC UI test. So only human intelligence or developers who are knowledgeable in their respective arenas would be able to comprehend uh, where there might be some lack of understanding. I would not say mistakes, but probably it was not communicated with adequate context, or probably the engine could not gauge the context correctly. That's why it provided a partially incorrect generated output. So, it's pretty much, to answer and summarize your question, it's pretty much dependent upon human intelligence still. And that's why these benchmarking exercises are taking place throughout different industries to actually figure out how much of productivity gain is possible, right? we mentioned 30 to 60% productivity gain may be there. Why not 100%? That's for exactly the same reason, that the generated content has to be validated, and of course there may be content which have to be added by human intelligence.
So the next question is, are there limitations or areas where generative AI may not be suitable?
Okay, okay. So, true, that's a very good question as well. For example, in some cases, even while we are, if we take one example of coding again from a software development perspective, now where there are websites involved or mobile application is involved, it involves generating the UI as per the UX designs or mockups which are provided by the designers, right? So generative AI may not be able to take the design as an input and correctly generate the code output there. It is very good when it comes to writing business logic or algorithms or even integration with known frameworks, but not when generating UI as per the required human designs. So that may be one example of limitation from a software development perspective, where and there might be multiple such examples. And secondly, when we talk about generating content, not generating code per se, there are limitations sometimes. For example, generative AI may not necessarily always identify the source of the content, because as we mentioned, you know it runs on tons and tons of training data, right? And training models. And not necessarily like every data is read from a particular website. So it's possible that it does not always correctly or even identify the source of the content. It can be challenging to assess the bias of the original sources as well. So, it's pretty much in public domain that certain number of times, there are different news outlets or newspapers which have a particular kind of a bias, right? There are leftist aligned news outlets, there are right aligned news outlets, there are centrist outlets. So sometimes a lot of this content which generative AI is consuming have a particular amount of bias in it. So it is not always factual content, it may be biased content which is difficult to gauge. So whenever there's a chance of we seeking some content which may not be factual and may include some amount of bias, so that is where we have to be careful about and double careful about.
Thank you, sir, for beautifully answering the question. So, the next thing that we would like to know is, can you discuss how generative models handle bias and what efforts are being made to improve the fairness of AI generated content?
I'm really enjoying the audience. I mean, that's just the keyword that I mentioned, and the next question pops up quickly. So, Jack, a very good question again. Very good question. How can generative models handle bias? What are the different steps and efforts that are being made to improve fairness in AI generated content? Very good. It will take some time, to be frank, to reach at that stage, but what is being um, popularly preached by researchers and many who are working on this field is data called data augmentation. So essentially, what is data augmentation? It is about diversifying the training data as much as possible so that it can reduce bias to the minimum. So the more diverse the training data is, it is the key to reducing bias as much as possible. So data augmentation, what it does is it involves deliberately introducing a variety of perspectives and backgrounds into the training data set. This helps the AI model also to learn to generate content that's fairer and more representative. So that's one of the key areas which is being undertaken in this regard.
So this is our final question. Thank you, sir, for conducting the session beautifully and for enhancing our knowledge on generative AI to such a great extent. We would
Thanks a
conclude the
lot
session
for
now.
this. Yeah, thanks a lot for this wonderful session, and it was great to have some amazing questions from the very learned audience. I'm sure I'll have a good amount of takeaways to take along with me after this session. Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Have a wonderful evening.